Hey everyone, I'm Nico from Licks of the Beast, and this video is going to be an in-depth look at Iron Maiden's 1990 album, No Prayer for the Dying. No Prayer for the Dying is one of Iron Maiden's most misunderstood albums, and I think one of the reasons it's so misunderstood is that back then, artists were not in the public eye anywhere near as much as they are today. Other than some fairly contained and often not very in-depth interviews, most of the time, we fans knew very little about the inner workings of a band or the state of mind of a musician or songwriter. From the first album, released in 1980, to Seventh Son of a Seventh Son, released only 8 years later, the band had written, recorded, and released 7 game-changing, life-altering albums, went on 6 massive world tours, and managed to evolve their sound, musicianship, songwriting, and performance with every release. So from the fans' point of view, this is a band that is honing their craft and becoming ever more progressive musically, sonically, and visually. From the band's point of view, however, a decade had passed since the first album, and they found themselves mentally, emotionally, and physically exhausted, and probably didn't recognize the world around them anymore because they had spent the better part of the decade trapped in a never-ending loop. So in a way, these guys never really saw much of the entire 1980s. No Prayer for the Dying is a very honest album that genuinely reflects the band's state of mind, trying to make sense of where the world was at that time. And it's a very emotional, sometimes angry album, like they had never done before and they never have since. There is also another side to this. Nowadays, most people consider Somewhere in Time and Seventh Son of a Seventh Son to be Iron Maiden's greatest accomplishments. But at the time, many fans felt that those albums did not sound enough like Maiden and were too proggy, too commercial, and overproduced. So in a way, Steve Harris was also trying to do right by those fans with an album that was a return to a more raw and aggressive sound. Now unfortunately, the production on some songs turned out a bit flat, and those songs lacked the power to really come to life. Still, the album does feel raw and has a very recognizable sound. Before going any further, I have a little disclaimer for you. I am not suggesting that you have to like this album. If you love it, great. If you think it's the worst album ever recorded in the history of rock music, also great. I always say music is a very subjective experience, and life is not nearly long enough to waste time on things you don't enjoy. So I'm making this video because I have always loved this album, and I want to share with you why I feel that way. I've always thought that many people didn't give the album a fair shot when it was first released due to it being so far off from expectations. So it's my hope that what I'll say here might inspire some of you to check it out again, and maybe you'll be pleasantly surprised. When the Holy Smoke single was released, I bought the picture disc, this is it right here, and I thought it was a fantastic song. I also really like the candid-ish video of them just being silly and playing soccer, so by the time the album came out, I had already heard Holy Smoke about 100 times or more. And I also want to say that this is probably the coolest the band had ever looked up until that point. Solid and without any weird fashion choices. Now, as much as I like the single, and I had heard Yannick play on that and on Bruce's solo album Tattooed Millionaire, it was still the first album without Adrian, who was kind of irreplaceable to me, and I knew this was going to be a much more raw sounding album, so I had no idea what to expect, and I was so nervous as I pressed play and held the lyrics in my hands. And as soon as TAILGUNNER started, I felt this tightening in my stomach, and I blurted out, "Yes, it's still them!" The way TAILGUNNER starts is 100% pure Maiden. So you have the syncopated intro. The major scale 4-3-1 pattern. The Mixolydian melody. Right, that's the Number of the Beast, Wrathchild, Clairvoyant. It's classic Maiden. I think it's a phenomenal tune. Yes, it's a bit Aces High revisited with its theme and song structure, but it's still a very different song with great riffs and beautiful vocal melodies. It's also the very first song I heard them play live, as this tour was my first time ever seeing Maiden. This TAILGUNNER shirt I'm wearing is the actual tour shirt that I bought at that show back in January 1991. So this is a 31-year-old shirt that obviously I'm only wearing for this video. It was a phenomenal show and the band's energy was just incredible. You can find some pretty good quality videos from that tour on YouTube, and I recommend you check some of those out. Holy Smoke is next, as Maiden love to put the main single second or third on their albums. And as I've said earlier, I really enjoy this song a lot. And again, it has that very Maiden major scale pattern. And I love how they skip a beat when they go back to it after the second chorus. That's the kind of little arranging thing that makes me lose my mind. It also has the coolest Zeppelin-esque post-chorus riff. The lyrics are all about televangelists, which at the time were very popular, and some were making disgusting amounts of money from manipulating people who were just so desperate to believe in something and someone close to them. I heard Bruce talk about this song when he was on the local rock radio station in Montreal a bit before the album was released, and he sounded so disgusted and outraged at the whole phenomenon. And it's very apparent in his vocal delivery. The third song is the title track. This is a very introspective piece about trying to make sense of one's own existence and perhaps find meaning in this chaos that is life. At least that's how I've always understood it, and Bruce delivers an impassioned performance during the self-reflective verses and on the imploring chorus at the end, asking God for the answers he ultimately cannot find on his own. This is a powerful song, but it also has some beautiful melodies, like the main theme. And Dave's second solo on this song is absolutely wild and incredibly intense, with wide bends, dive bombs, pick scrapes, and fast legato motifs. It really works so well leading into that chorus. Public Enema number 1 is next. This is a fantastic Dave Murray song and very aggressive for something written by a guy who's got a smile permanently stuck to his face. I think Bruce's performance here is absolutely brilliant. You can feel the disgust and the anger of someone who's looking at the current state of affairs and does not like what he sees from the people who are supposed to be in charge and instead seem to be just serving their own interests at the expense of those who put them there. The intro is such a beautiful melody with Dave playing this. And Yannick playing the higher harmony. The coolest part for me is the chorus, where they start playing the chords with a halftime feel. And then Dave plays an octave melody on top of that on the second half of the chorus as the rhythm section goes back to regular time. Again, very solid arranging and songwriting. Side 1 closes with another Dave Murray song. I know, right? Which starts off a bit like a darker, more brooding Deja Vu, with Dave playing this really melodic, a bit melancholic solo. Then you get the main riff, which also serves as the chorus riff, and it's so simple yet very catchy. The bass and drums really make that part stand out with a very percussive rhythm that reminds me a lot of Sea of Madness. Tons of cool bass fills on this one, and this really great harmony part between Dave and Yannick's solos. So you have Dave's part. And Yannick takes the high harmony. Side 2 opens with The Assassin, which is a song made up of one cool part after another. Check out the intro. So you have the bass doing this pattern here. Dave Murray playing these clean arpeggios. And then Yannick comes in with a percussive rhythm like this. After that, they go into this staccato, syncopated rhythm that is reminiscent of an old film noir. The whole song feels like watching a spy thriller from the 60s, really. It's incredible how Steve Harris always manages to capture these vibes in his songs. Run Silent, Run Deep is next, a song about submarine warfare based on the book and movie of the same name. Like The Assassin, this one too really captures the feel of the subject matter. The haunting intro sounds like you're in a submarine moving slowly across the depths of a cold, dark ocean. This part is so cool. Check this out. The verse rhythm is classic Maiden with the gallop, staccato chords, and fast fill. Goes like this. And this is actually the only song on the album with a gallop rhythm. Hooks in You is a song written by Adrian Smith and Bruce Dickinson. So there was a hint of Adrian on the album. It was kind of a bittersweet thing at the time, especially because it wasn't an album highlight or anything. But it's a good song with a really great Adrian riff, clearly inspired by Michael Schenker's Armed and Ready. Bruce's lyrics are kind of a tongue-in-cheek S&M thing, which I thought didn't do the song justice, but there are some funny play on words, so it still works. Yannick does a pretty catchy little solo on it. It goes something like this. Fender to the Slaughter was a song Bruce wrote for Nightmare on Elm Street 5, and it's based on what he thought the Nightmare on Elm Street movies represented, and that was an adolescent girl's fear of period pains. I don't know where he got that, but whatever, it led to a great song with its very AC/DC-esque opening riffs. And this phenomenal breakdown in the middle. With the harmony part on top of that. And Yannick does a solo at warp speed with some pretty intense picking, and I've always found that solo extremely hard to replicate. I still can't do it really. It sounds a bit like Angus Young on Fast Forward in some parts. But the great thing about this solo is that for how frantic it is, it's still very memorable. That brings us to the album's closer, Mother Russia. Which is kind of a condensed epic in a way. And what I mean by that is that it has the structure and arrangement of a Steve Harris epic like Alexander the Great or Seventh Son of a Seventh Son, only in shortened form. So even though it's the longest song on the album, it's actually only 5.5 minutes long. My favorite moment on the song is the breakdown part, which really reminds me of Alexander the Great and Seventh Son. Then the harmony comes in. It's so good. It also features a great solo section where Dave and Yannick trade solos a few times and then a beautiful chorus to end the song. A bit like on the title track where the chorus only comes once at the end. The lyrics are very powerful and emotionally charged as the song was written during the dissolution of the Soviet Union. So the song is a bit melancholic, hopeful, very majestic, and picturesque. It's everything you want in a closer to an Iron Maiden album. That's it for this video. As I mentioned at the beginning, I really hope this will inspire some of you to give this album another listen with a different mindset and perhaps rediscover some of the great music contained within. Let me know your thoughts and questions in the comments. Don't forget to leave a like and do consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. Thank you all so much for watching and stay tuned for more licks of the beast.